All right, buckle up, everyone, because today we're taking a deep dive into the power of information.
Ooh, sounds intense.
It is, in the best way possible. We're going to be pulling some insights from Yuval Noah Harari's book, Nexus.
Oh, I love Harari. He always has such a thought-provoking take on things.
Exactly. And this one's no different. We usually think of information as like representing truth, like facts and figures.
Right, the building blocks of knowledge.
Yeah, but Harari suggests it's actually way more about connection. He says information actually creates realities.
Whoa, okay, I'm intrigued. How does he explain that?
Well, he uses astrology as an example.
Astrology, like horoscopes and zodiac signs.
Yep. He says even though it might not be scientifically accurate.
I mean, let's be real, it's not exactly hard science.
Right. But it still connects people who share those beliefs. Like, think about it. Two people meet, find out they're both Scorpios.
Suddenly they feel like they have this cosmic connection.
Exactly. It's not about truth in a scientific sense. It's about the social reality that information creates. Okay, yeah, I can see that. It's like those personality quizzes that tell you what kind of bread you are based on your music taste.
Exactly. It's fun. And it might spark a conversation even if it's not, like, scientifically valid.
Right. But Harari takes this idea way beyond horoscopes and quizzes.
Oh, yeah. He argues this connecting power of information has been shaping human history since, like, the dawn of time.
Wow, that's a bold claim.
It is.
Yeah.
But he makes a good case. He starts with early humans. We're biologically programmed to live in small groups.
Right. Limited by our social capacity.
But shared myths and rituals helped early humans overcome that limitation and form larger tribes.
Oh, I see. So those stories, those bits of information, helped create a sense of shared identity.
Exactly. A sense of belonging and purpose, strong enough to unite people who would otherwise be strangers.
It's fascinating how a simple story could be so powerful.
Right. And Harari points out that those shared stories actually gave those tribes a survival advantage.
Makes sense. They could cooperate better, defend themselves more effectively. Yep. Pass on knowledge to future generations, too. So the information in the form of those stories literally became a force for survival.
Wow. It makes you wonder about the stories we're telling ourselves today.
Oh, absolutely. What narratives are shaping our reality, even if we don't realize it?
So much to think about already. But I'm curious, how does Harari connect this to, like, the rise of empires?
Well, he argues that information technologies, like writing, were essential for those massive, complex societies to form.
Of course, writing allowed for record-keeping, communication across distances.
Exactly. Rulers could manage larger populations, coordinate resources, all the things empires need to function.
It's amazing how something as seemingly simple as writing could have such a profound impact.
Right. And to really drive this point home, Harari brings up this super interesting example: ancient Assyrian contracts.
Contracts, huh? What's so special about those?
Well, apparently for them, destroying a contract wasn't just about getting rid of paper.
What do you mean?
They believed it literally killed the debt itself. Like, the information on that document wasn't just representing the debt, it was creating it.
Whoa, that's a powerful way of looking at it. The information itself had a life of its own.
It's mind-blowing. It really makes you think about the tangible impact information has on our world.
Yeah, and how much power we give to certain types of information.
Exactly. And this leads us to another key concept Harari explores: bureaucracy.
Ah, yes, the infamous bureaucracy. Paperwork, forms, all that fun stuff.
Well, Harari argues that bureaucracy is all about organizing information, creating categories, shaping how we see the world.
Okay, I can see that. Governments use forms and databases to manage populations. Schools use tests to evaluate students.
Right. It's all about trying to create order and manage complexity.
But I guess the question is, at what cost?
Exactly. And that's where things get a little tricky. Because while bureaucracy can bring efficiency, it often comes at the cost of truth. Like, think about filling out a really long form. You're trying to squeeze your whole life story into these little boxes.
I hate those forms. They never have enough space for a nuanced response.
Right. And sometimes it feels like you're adapting to the form, not the other way around.
So in a way, you're distorting your own reality to fit the structure imposed by the information system.
Precisely. And Harari argues that this happens on a much larger scale, too.
Yeah.
Think about how academic disciplines are divided into separate faculties.
History, biology, math, all in their own little silos.
Yeah, and he suggests that this might actually limit our understanding of how those fields intersect in the real world.
It's like we create these neat categories, but then reality spills over the edges and we're left trying to fit square pegs into round holes.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder how this impacts scientific research, our overall understanding of the world, everything.
It's a fascinating point. The structure of knowledge itself, how we categorize and organize it, could be influencing what we discover.
It's a lot to consider, right? But before we spiral too far down that rabbit hole, Harari brings up another interesting comparison. He contrasts two other information technologies that have shaped our realities:
Okay, I'm all ears. What are they?
sacred texts and self-correcting mechanisms.
Interesting. So two very different approaches to information.
Exactly. He uses these examples to explore how those different approaches can lead to vastly different outcomes.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's start with sacred texts. What's his take on those?
So he points out that sacred texts, like the Jewish Bible, for example, claim divine infallibility.
Right, they're presented as the ultimate truth.
And they resist change to maintain social order. It's like saying, this is the word of God, end of story.
Which, in a way, makes sense. If you want to create a unified and stable society, having a set of unquestionable beliefs can be pretty effective.
Totally. It provides a foundation, a shared sense of truth that can hold a community together.
But what about those self-correcting mechanisms? How do they fit into this?
Well, Harari contrasts those with sacred texts. He points to the scientific method as a prime example.
Ah, the scientific method. Always testing, revising, refining our understanding.
Exactly. It embraces fallibility. It's less about finding a definitive answer and more about constantly questioning and seeking evidence.
So with sacred texts, you have a fixed point of reference, but with self-correcting mechanisms, you have a constantly evolving understanding of the world.
It's a great way to put it. And it makes you think about how each approach has shaped different societies and belief systems throughout history.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
But it feels like in our modern world, things are getting even more complicated.
Oh, for sure. Especially with the rise of things like populism and social media, it feels like the lines between truth and falsehood are getting blurrier by the day.
That's a great point, and it's actually where we'll pick up in part 2. We'll explore how these new forces are shaping the information landscape and what it means for all of us.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break.
Okay, so we were just talking about how things are getting, well, kind of messy in the world of information.
Yeah, for sure. It feels like with populism and social media, it's harder than ever to figure out what's true and what's not.
Right. And Harari actually addresses this head-on in Nexus. He talks about how populism really changes the game when it comes to information.
I'm curious to hear his take on that. It seems like every day there's a new scandal or controversy brewing online.
It's exhausting. But Harari argues that populism doesn't just change how we consume information, it actually shifts how we view information itself.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's not just about the content, it's about our whole relationship with information.
Exactly. He says that for populists, information isn't necessarily about truth or accuracy, it's about power.
Whoa, okay, that's a bold statement.
Right. But think about it. Leaders like Donald Trump and movements like QAnon often frame information as a weapon.
You mean like they claim the elites are controlling information and deceiving the public? Yep. They present themselves as having this direct line to the truth, bypassing those traditional gatekeepers like the media or scientific experts.
It's like they're saying, don't trust those institutions, trust me.
Exactly. And that has some pretty serious consequences for democracy and social cohesion.
Yeah, I mean, how can we even have a productive debate if we can't agree on a shared set of facts?
Right. It creates this environment where everyone is retreating into their own information bubbles, surrounded by people who already agree with them.
And those bubbles are often amplified by algorithms on social media, feeding us more and more of what we already like and believe.
It's like a recipe for polarization. Harari suggests this could lead to a world where we're all living in these completely different information universes, each with its own version of reality.
It's a bit mind-boggling to think about. But I guess the question is, what can we do about it?
That's the million-dollar question. And to be honest, there are no easy answers. But Harari stresses the importance of critical thinking, media literacy, and building trust in reliable sources of information.
That makes sense. We need to be more discerning about what we consume and share online.
Absolutely. And we need to be wary of those who try to exploit our emotions or biases for their own gain.
It's like we need to develop a kind of information immune system able to recognize and reject harmful content.
Great analogy. And this is where things get even more interesting, because Because on top of all of this, we have AI emerging as this incredibly powerful force in the information landscape.
AI, huh? It feels like that's the buzzword of the century. But what makes it so different from other technologies we've seen before?
Well, Harari argues that AI is unlike any other information technology we've encountered because it's not just a tool, it's becoming an agent.
An agent, meaning.
It means it's capable of learning, adapting, and even creating new information on its own. It's not just processing data, it's actively shaping the information landscape.
Whoa, okay, now that's a game changer. It's like we're creating a new form of intelligence that could potentially rival our own.
It's both exciting and a little terrifying, right? And it raises a whole new set of questions about how we control information, how we discern truth, even what it means to be human in a world where machines can think.
I can see why you said this deep dive was going to be intense. It's a lot to wrap your head around. But I'm hooked. What are some of the specific ways Harari sees AI impacting our world?
Well, one of the most concerning possibilities is that AI could exacerbate this problem of information bubbles we were just talking about.
You mean by creating even more personalized echo chambers?
Exactly. Imagine an AI-powered newsfeed that filters out any information that challenges your worldview.
So you're only exposed to information that confirms your biases, regardless of whether it's true or not.
It's like having a personal spin doctor curating your entire reality.
It would make those social media echo chambers look like child's play.
Right, and this has huge implications for democracy and social cohesion. How can we have meaningful conversations or make collective decisions if we're all operating from completely different sets of facts?
It's a scary thought. But isn't there a chance AI could be used to combat misinformation? Like, couldn't we develop algorithms to detect and flag fake news or propaganda?
That's definitely a possibility, and in fact, there are already some promising initiatives in that area. But it's a complex challenge, because as AI gets better at detecting and removing harmful content, it also gets better at creating it.
Oh, wow. I hadn't even considered that. So it's like an arms race between the forces of truth and falsehood, both powered by AI.
It's a bit of a technological tug of war, and it highlights the importance of not just developing powerful AI systems, but also developing ethical AI systems.
Ethical AI, what does that even mean?
It means building AI systems that are aligned with human values, that prioritize things like truth, fairness, and accountability.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you actually build ethics into an algorithm? It's not like you can just program a robot to be a good person.
It's definitely not that simple. But Harari suggests that we need to be more intentional about the data we use to train AI systems, the goals we set for them, and the safeguards we put in place to prevent harm.
So it's about being proactive, anticipating potential problems, and developing solutions before those problems turn into crises.
Exactly. And it's about having a broader conversation about the role we want AI to play in our lives. It's not just a technological issue, it's a societal issue, a philosophical issue.
You know, one thing that keeps coming up for me is this idea that AI could exacerbate existing inequalities. Like, if access to information and technology is already unevenly distributed, won't AI just make that worse?
That's a really important point, and Harari actually addresses that directly. He talks about the potential for what he calls data colonialism.
Data colonialism. Okay, I'm intrigued, but also a little scared to ask, what does that even mean?
It's the idea that powerful countries or companies could exploit the data of less developed nations.
So, like, they would gather vast amounts of personal data from people in developing countries, use that data to train powerful AI systems, and then profit from those systems without sharing any of the benefits with the people whose data was used in the first place.
That's exactly it. It's like a new form of economic exploitation, where data becomes the raw material for wealth creation.
And whoever controls the data controls the wealth, potentially widening the gap between the haves and have-nots even further.
It's a sobering thought. And it highlights the need for greater awareness, regulation, and ethical considerations when it comes to data collection and use, especially on a global scale.
It feels like we're talking about forces far bigger than any one individual or organization. Like, how can we possibly steer this technology in a direction that benefits all of humanity?
It's a monumental task, for sure. But Harari's point is that we can't just sit back and let things unfold. We need to be active participants in shaping the future of AI. We need to demand transparency from those who are developing and deploying these systems. We need to educate ourselves about the potential risks and benefits. And we need to have those tough conversations about the kind of world we want to create.
It's a powerful message. It's not about surrendering to the robots, but about working together to build a future where AI serves humanity not the other way around.
And that's where we'll pick up in part 3. We'll explore some of the more optimistic possibilities of AI and discuss what steps we can take to ensure a future where technology empowers us rather than enslaves us. Okay, so we've talked about AI's potential to reshape our political landscape and, all those social
Right,
structures.
those big systemic shifts.
Exactly. But let's bring it down to earth a bit. Let's talk about something that impacts, well, everyone.
Something a little closer to home.
Yeah, exactly. Our wallets.
Ah, yes, the economy. Always a hot topic.
So how does Harari see AI impacting the economy, especially when it comes to the future of work? I mean, that's a big one, right?
Absolutely. It's probably one of the biggest anxieties people have about AI.
Yeah, are the robots going to take our jobs? Isn't that what we're all freaking out about?
It's a valid concern, and Harari doesn't shy away from that. He acknowledges the potential for job displacement, for sure.
Okay, so it's not all sunshine and roses then.
Not necessarily. I mean, certain sectors, like manufacturing or transportation, those could see massive automation.
Yeah, I can see that. Like self-driving trucks replacing truck drivers.
Exactly. And that could lead to unemployment, economic hardship, all those very real concerns.
It's tough to balance that, right? The potential benefits of AI with the potential downsides.
Totally. And Harari tries to grapple with that. He doesn't present it as a simple good versus bad scenario.
Okay, so it's more nuanced than that.
Much more. He suggests this shift could actually free us from the grind of traditional work.
Oh, like a 4-hour work week. Sign me up.
Huh. Well, maybe not that extreme. But the idea is that if machines are doing the repetitive manual labor,
Humans could focus on more creative, fulfilling pursuits.
precisely, things that require our uniquely human skills and abilities.
So instead of being stuck in a cubicle all day, we could all become artists, musicians, philosophers.
Huh? Well, maybe not everyone will choose those paths. But the point is, it opens up possibilities.
Possibilities for a more meaningful, purposeful existence.
Exactly. But of course, it's not that simple, right?
There's always a catch, isn't there?
Well, the big question is, how do we structure our economic systems if human labor isn't the primary source of value?
Oh, right. If robots are doing all the work, how do we distribute wealth? How do we make sure everyone benefits?
Those are the million-dollar questions.
Yeah.
And honestly, we don't have all the answers yet.
It feels like we're on the verge of a total paradigm shift. Almost as big as the shift from feudalism to capitalism.
It's a great comparison. And just like with any major societal transformation, there will be challenges and opportunities.
So it's not just about fearing the robots. It's about figuring out how we adapt, how we evolve.
Exactly. And Harari actually uses historical examples to illustrate this point. He talks about the anxieties surrounding the introduction of the printing press.
Oh, yeah. People were worried it would put scribes out of business, right?
Exactly. They feared mass unemployment. But what happened?
Well, the printing press led to an explosion of new jobs and industries.
Precisely. It's a classic example of how technological advancements can disrupt, but they also create new opportunities.
It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When one door closes, another one opens.
Exactly. But the challenge is, we don't always know what those new doors will look like until they're right in front of us.
So how do we prepare for jobs that don't even exist yet?
That's the big question. But Harari suggests that focusing on those uniquely human skills will be key.
Like creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, those things that AI can't replicate.
Exactly. Those soft skills, the ability to connect with other humans on an emotional level, to understand nuance, to navigate complex social situations.
The stuff that robots are still pretty bad at.
Yeah. For now, at least.
Yeah.
So the focus needs to shift from rote memorization and repetitive tasks.
To more adaptability, flexibility, the ability to learn and evolve as the landscape changes.
Exactly. It's about being lifelong learners, constantly expanding our skill set and embracing new ways of thinking.
So it's not about competing with the robots, it's about finding those areas where humans and AI can complement each other.
Precisely. It's about collaboration, not competition.
I like that. It's a more hopeful way of looking at things.
Well, and Harari doesn't shy away from the philosophical questions either.
Oh, yeah. The big ones. What does it mean to be human in a world where machines can think?
Exactly. Are we just biological algorithms ourselves? Will AI eventually surpass human intelligence and render us obsolete? Those are the big existential questions that he wants us to grapple with.
It's a lot to process. But I think it's important to have these conversations now.
Absolutely. The more we explore these ideas, the better equipped we'll be to navigate this new era.
And to shape a future where AI serves humanity, not the other way around.
Well said. It's about taking ownership of our role in this technological revolution.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. Nexus has given us a lot to think about.
It has. And it's clear that this conversation about AI is just beginning.
We've only scratched the surface, but hopefully this has sparked some curiosity, some critical thinking, and maybe even a little bit of hope for the future.
I think so. It's not about fearing the unknown. It's about embracing the possibilities and shaping the future we want to see.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Nexus. We'll be back soon with more explorations of the ideas that matter most. Until then, keep thinking critically, keep learning, and keep shaping the world you want to see.